All right, so Chapter 4, Lesson 5 is Convert Measurement Units. The table shows the approximate weights in tons of several large land animals. 1 ton is equivalent to 2,000 pounds. You can use a ratio table to convert each weight from tons to pounds. So here the first two are done for us. It says complete the ratio table. To produce equivalent ratios, we want to multiply the quantities in each row by the same number. So we want to look to see how am I getting from 1 to 2,000, from 4 to 8,000. Well, here we're multiplying times 2,000. So 1 times 2,000 is 2,000, 4 times 2,000 is 8,000, and 5 times 2,000 is 10,000, and 8 times 2,000, of course, is 16,000. So that's the table. That's the ratio table. Number 2 says use the coordinate plane to graph the ordered pairs as tons, comma, pounds. So tons is in the x position. That's the x coordinate. So that's going to be on the x-axis, weight in tons. And then pounds, weight in pounds, will be on the y-axis. Okay? So when we graph, we're going to graph 1, comma, 2,000, 2, comma, 8,000, 5, comma, 10,000, and 8, comma, 16,000. So here, just to help us out, I just took out the thousands. So you can see that now I can just graph 1, comma, 2, 2, comma, 8, 4, comma, 8, 5, comma, 10, and 8, comma, 16. So this is what our graph looks like. And letter D says connect the points and describe the graph. So there, the points lie on a straight line. So now we're going to convert larger units to smaller units. We're going to convert larger units to smaller units. So here it says each relationship in the table down here can be written as a ratio. For example, we know that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. We can also use the ratio 3 feet to 1 yard to convert yards to feet. So here, we're going to call those, this is what we call those conversion factors. So let's write that down, conversion factor. So this is a conversion factor, and this is a conversion factor. Now in the table here we have all of our customary conversions. These are conversions that you should have, you should be familiar with. Okay? You don't have to write down the table. When you take a test, I will post it on the board so that you have the conversions. So here it says like a unit rate, a unit ratio is one in which the denominator is 1 unit. Please make sure you write down that definition. A unit ratio is one in which the denominator is 1 unit. So the ratio 3 feet to 1 yard is called the unit ratio. Now we use dimensional analysis, which is the process of including units of measurement as factors when you compute. So we are including the units. So when we are doing this lesson and converting units, it is very important that you write your units. If you do not include your units in your dimensional analysis conversions, then your answer will be marked wrong. So make sure you include your units. Now this part over here, it says multiplying by 1. You don't have to write this down, just pay attention and listen. So here, it says that the ratio 3 feet to 1 yard is equivalent to 1 because the numerator and the denominator represent the same amount. It's the same thing as like when we have 2 over 2. 2 over 2, that's equal to 1. 8 over 8, that's equal to 1. So it's the same amount on the top and the same amount on the bottom if you have the numerator and the denominator, which is being the same amount, that is equal to 1. So you know that 3 feet, highlight this, 3 feet is the same amount as 1 yard. So you have the same on the top, same on the bottom, just like up here. 3 feet over 1 yard is equal to 1. All right, so let's convert, in this example, we're going to convert 20 feet to inches. So here, the conversion factor that we're looking at is 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So when we start, we're going to start with a dimensional analysis table, okay? And we're going to start by putting what we're starting with in the top left-hand corner. So we're starting with 20 feet. That goes in the top left-hand corner. Now, the conversion factor is 1 foot to 12 inches. So here we want to put feet in the table so that feet will cancel and we'll be left with inches. So in that case, feet, because feet is in the numerator, we're going to put feet in the denominator so that they can cancel out. And then what we're left with is inches. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply straight across. The dimensional analysis, this is pretty much like multiplying fractions. So this is going to be 20 over 1, for example, 20 over 1, times 12 inches over 1. So that's 20 times 12 is 240 over 1 times 1, which is 1. And of course you don't have to write the 1, so that's going to be 20 feet is equal to 240 inches. So let's try these together. So here we're going to convert 36 yards to feet. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to think about what our conversion factor is going to be. So yards and feet, we know that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. So now we're going to put this information on our dimensional analysis table or our chart. So we're going to start with 36 yards. So that goes in the top left-hand corner. So this is going to be 36 yards. And we want to place yards and feet so that yards will cancel. Now, since yards is in the numerator, that means this yards has to go in the denominator. Okay? So when we place this, 1 yard goes on the bottom, and 3 feet goes in the top, in the numerator. So if you want to, again, you can put a 1 down here. You don't have to. You can just imagine it that it's there. So now we have 36 yards over 1 times 3 feet over 1 yard. So before we multiply, we should simplify. So you can see, of course, yards and yards will cancel. And that's all we can cancel. And now we're left, the only units that we have left is feet. So when we multiply straight across, we get 36 times 3, which is 108. And that's, of course, 108 feet over 1 times 1, which is 1. And, of course, do I have to write the 1 in the denominator? No. So you're just going to end up with 108 feet. So you don't have to write the 1 in the denominator. You're going to end up with 108 feet. All right, so for example B, now this one is different because we have a fraction. So here we've got 3/4 of a ton. So when we write this, well, first we want to figure out what our conversion factor is. So we know that 2,000 pounds is equal to 1 ton. Okay? So now we can put this on our dimensional analysis chart. Okay? So we're starting with 3/4 of a ton. So now with the fraction, you're going to write it, because remember I said that this is as a fraction times a fraction. So this is going to be 3/4 tons times our conversion factor. So here, this is 1 ton, and this is 2,000 pounds. So in order for me to cancel tons, because tons is in the numerator, I have to put tons in the denominator. So I'm going to put 1 ton down here, and then up here, we're going to write 2,000 pounds. And of course, now, before we multiply, we should simplify. So once again, you can see that tons and tons will cancel. And look at that, 4 and 2,000, we can simplify that. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and then 2,000 divided by 4 is 500. Very good. All right, so now when we multiply straight across, we have 3 times 500 pounds, which is 1,500 pounds. Over 1 times 1, we don't have to write the over 1, so it's just 1,500 pounds. All right, for example C. Now here's a little bit different fraction. This is a mixed number. Before we put this 1 and 1/2 into our dimensional analysis chart, we need to change that to an improper fraction. So 1 and 1/2 is going to be equal to 3/2. So that is what we're going to put in our chart. Okay? So now we need to look to see what our conversion factor is. So we want to go from quarts to pints. Okay? So we're going to look at our table. And here you can see 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. So that's our conversion factor. So there's our conversion factor, and now we put that on our dimensional analysis chart. So we're starting with 3/2 quarts. So once again, we're going to write that as a fraction. So that's going to be 3/2 quarts. And now we're going to multiply that times our conversion factor. So our conversion factor is 1 quart equals 2 pints. Quarts is in the numerator, so we need to put 1 quart in the denominator and 2 quarts in the numerator, or 2 pints, in the numerator. So now, before we multiply, we can simplify. And of course, the quarts and the quarts simplify, those cancel out. And then, look at this, 2 and 2, those can cancel too. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and same thing up there. So when we multiply straight across, we end up with 3 times 1, and our units are pints. I forgot to point out up there it's pounds. 3 times 1 pints, that's going to be 3 pints, over 1 times 1, which is just 1. So our final answer there is going to be 3 pints. So here's our word problem example. It says Marco mixes 1/4 cup of fertilizer with soil before planting each bulb. How many fluid ounces of fertilizer does he use per bulb? So here, once again, we're starting with 1/4 a cup of fertilizer. 1/4 cup of fertilizer. And it says how many fluid ounces. So we're going from cups to fluid ounces. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look up our conversion factor. So our conversion factor right here, 1 cup is equal to 8 fluid ounces. 8 fluid ounces. So the 1/4 cup goes on the left-hand side there. So 1/4 cup. And then cups and cups, we want them to cancel. So 1 cup goes in the denominator and fluid ounces goes in the numerator. So cups and cups cancel, and now we can multiply straight across. We get 8 fluid ounces over 4. Now, and that simplifies 8 divided by 4 is equal to 2. Could I have simplified right here first? 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. When I multiply straight across, I get 2 fluid ounces. I could do that too. Okay? Very good. So let's do example D together. It says Jen runs 1/8 of a mile before tennis practice. How many feet does she run before practice? So we want to convert miles to feet. So we're going to look up our conversion factor again, of course. 5,280 feet is equal to 1 mile. So now we're going to create our dimensional analysis chart. So that's 1/8 of a mile. So 1/8 of a mile goes right there. And now we want to place our conversion factor so that miles will cancel. So 1 mile goes in the denominator, and 5,280 feet, 5,280 feet go in the numerator. So now we multiply. And of course, before we multiply, we can simplify. So miles and miles cancel. And then, look at this. We can divide 5,280. I'm going to do this in green. 5,280. We can divide that by 8. So 8 goes into 52 6 times. So 8 goes into 5,280 660 times. So 8 divided by 8 is equal to 1, and 5,280 divided by 8 is 660. And of course, miles and miles canceled, so that tells us that feet is our final unit. So, which is what we're looking for. When we multiply straight across, 1 times 660, that's 660. And we make sure we write our units, feet, over 1 times 1, which is 1, and this, we don't have to write that. All right, so we're going to convert smaller units to larger units. Now we want to remember that the ratios 1 yard to 3 feet is equivalent to 3 feet to 1 yard. Those are equivalent because they're the same size in the top and the bottom. Okay, so it says to convert the smaller units to larger units, you're going to use a ratio that allows you to divide out the common units. Okay, so here we're going to start, for example, with 12 feet. We want to place our conversion factor on our dimensional analysis table here so that feet and feet will cancel. So you know how, you remember when you have a fraction in the numerator, when you're simplifying fractions, you have to have the same number in the numerator as you have in the denominator. Then you can cancel them out, right? So here, if we have feet in the numerator and feet in the denominator, then we can cancel them out. Okay? Is everybody clear with that? For example 3, it says convert 15 quarts to 3 gallons. Okay, this one you don't have to write it down, just pay attention and watch. Okay, so the conversion factor that we're going to start with, okay, well, we want to convert 15 quarts to gallons. You see that? The conversion factor for quarts to gallons is 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. Okay, now when we start off, you can see this chart, this table right here. You put this chart, and what you start with is the 15 quarts. That goes in the top left-hand corner. Then we look to see what our conversion factor is. So our conversion factor is 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. Now, we wanted to decide how are we going to put this conversion factor into our table so that quarts will cancel. Well, since quarts is on top, where am I going to put quarts for my conversion factor? On the bottom. You see that? So now quarts and quarts will cancel, and what are we left with? Gallons, right? So Now we can multiply. So with the dimensional analysis, all we're doing is multiplying. So we just multiply straight across. So 15 times 1 gallon is 15 gallons. And then down here, that's, you can put a 1 down there. 1 times 4 is 4. You see? Pretty simple. And then you can just change this to a decimal. You got that? You could also change it to a mixed number. How many times does 4 go into 15? 3 times, with how many left over? 3 left over. So that's going to be 3/4 gallons. 3 3/4 gallons, which is equal to 3.75 gallons. Is everybody clear with that? All right, so let's do this one together. A couple of these together. So here we want to convert 2,640 feet to miles. Okay? So we know, first we have to figure out what our conversion factor is. Do you guys know what it is? 5,280 feet. Very good. 5,280 feet is equal to 1 mile. Okay? So now we want to put some information on our chart. Okay. So we want to go from the original. The original, what we start with is 2,640 feet, right? So that's 2,640 feet. Okay. Now we want to place our conversion factor in here on the next section, so that feet will cancel. Okay. So if feet is in the numerator, where should feet go in the next part? In the next fraction. Should be in the denominator, right? So we're going to put 5,280 feet right here, and 1 mile goes in the numerator. So now we can multiply. But before we multiply, we should simplify, right? So here, feet and feet, those cancel out. So now what am I left with? I'm left with miles, which is what we're looking for, right? That's what we're looking for. So can I simplify the 2,640 and the 5,280? Yeah. Well, first we know they both end in zeros, right? So I can divide by 10, right? So can I just take away the zeros? Yeah. So we will end up with 264 over 528. Here, we can divide both of those by 264, right? So 264 divided by 264 is 1. And 528 divided by 264 is 2. Very good. So now, when we multiply straight across, we get 1 times 1, which is 1, and my units are miles, right? Over, and then we could put a 1 over here. So 1 times 2 is 2. So this, if you look at this right here, there's my fraction. So this is going to be 1/2 a mile. So 2,640 feet is equal to half a mile. All right, so for letter F, we're going from 100 ounces to pounds. So what is the conversion factor that you know? 16 ounces is equal to 1 pound. So I want you to make sure you're writing down your conversion factors. So now we can put this on our dimensional analysis table. Okay, I always want you to use the table. Okay, is everybody clear? All right, so we're starting with 100 ounces, right? So that goes in the top left-hand corner. So 100 ounces. Okay? Now, how am I going to place this so that the ounces will cancel? Where am I going to put ounces? On the bottom. Very good. So, we've got 16 ounces goes on the bottom. 1 pound goes on the top. And now we can multiply. But before we multiply, we should simplify. Good. So ounces and ounces will cancel, right? And what can I divide into 116?
2.
We can do better than 2. How about
5.
4? Okay. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. And 100 divided by 4 is 25. Very good. So now, when we multiply straight across, we have 25 times 1. What are my units? Pounds, right? So we have 25 pounds over 1 times 4. 4. So when I do this division, when I simplify that division right there, we have 25 divided by 4. So, how many times does 4 go into 25?
6 times.
6 times, with how many left over? So that's going to be 6 1/4 pounds. And of course, you can write this 1/4 as a decimal, right? So we can write 6.25. Very good. 6.25 pounds. So, for example 1, we're going to go back here to convert larger units to smaller units. So write this down. You're going to convert larger units to smaller units. Okay? The other examples, we were going from smaller to larger.